Welcome to the TheEatingCast. I am Chris.
And I'm Vincent. And today we're joined by a good friend, Mark Salas. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. We're glad to have you on. So, Mark, just go ahead and give us a little intro about you, who you are, what do you do, and kind of where you're going. Where you plan to go.
Where I plan to go?
Yeah.
So I'm a massage therapist. I work with you guys at your company. I've been doing it for about 7 years now, so I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I kind of had like a later in life transition from one career path to another. Okay. So I think I'm kind of on the right path where I should be. And as for where I'm going, I'm just going to kind of take this as far as I can. I think I kind of found where I'm meant to be and what I'm meant to do, so I'm just going to make this field kind of my end goal career path, and hopefully eventually give back to the community, start teaching, continuing ed classes, that sort of stuff.
Okay, that sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah. So that's when you say that, like, you're pretty much trying to master your own craft, try to figure out your own happiness, right? Try to satisfy that. That's a good transition, because today what we're talking about is Ayn Rand. We're talking about BioShock, her philosophy on objectivism, and then pretty much how man, according to her, is, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, it's to just satisfy his own happiness, and he was built to only produce and succeed in his own craft, right?
Basically, yeah. It's definitely a lot more involved than that, because she is considered a philosopher, or actually it's controversial whether she's considered a philosopher or not. So I don't think we're going to delve into that side of the argument, because it's really, really involved. But in essence, she brought up a lot of concepts that have really been controversial, but also have sparked a lot of thought. And central to those were her thought that selfishness is important, that you should basically only be concerned with your own happiness, within reason. There's parameters for that, and that your noblest, I think she says it, that your noblest achievement is your personal, like, production.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of people kind of start to get a bad taste in their mouth for her. Because it comes off as being rude. It comes off as being cutthroat, and you're out for yourself, and you're not willing to help anyone. And I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding there, and there's some room for the good sides of what that can bring.
Yeah.
Okay. So just kind of briefly going over Ayn Rand's, I am aware of her, but I'm not too knowledgeable in that kind of sense, what she was really about. I just knew the general topic, pretty much just what we just said, how she's kind of she's a philosopher in a sense where she believes in individual happiness, right, over pretty much the greater happiness in a sense. So how does just earlier we were just talking about it that and BioShock earlier, gaming.
Yeah, sure.
We're all nerds in a sense. But so how does that tie into BioShock? I was just kind of curious, the thought of that.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to kind of how Vincent and I started the entire topic. We were sitting in clinic one day, and he had the catchphrase. He just said, "Would you kindly?" I don't even remember.
It was because you and from our previous podcast, our listeners would know Eric. But you guys were getting at it for fun, right?
Yeah, which we usually do, yeah.
And he was like, "Fuck you," and I'm like, "Oh, he said it in a very nice way, right, to you?" And you're like, "I can't get back at him because he said it in such a nice way. He told me to fuck off, but gently." And I'm like, "Oh, just tell him, would you kindly fuck off, right?" And then you can't get mad at that. You said it nicely.
Totally. And then that triggered, immediately my head went straight to BioShock, because that's where that comes from. Would you kindly is a very important catchphrase in that game if you've ever played it. And so I immediately recognized it, and I looked at him and I said, "What are you trying to do? Some hypnotism on me or some mind control?" And he's like, "Oh, you know where that's from?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I played BioShock." So we started nerding out about that.
Everyone else was like, "Jesus Christ!"
And we were talking about the game just in general for a little bit, and then I mentioned, I was like, "Did you know that whole world that was created in that game, Rapture, was created loosely based off of Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism?" And he's like, who's that? What's that? And we started talking just a little bit about it. And he goes, "I want to read that book now and do a podcast on it." And kind of here we are.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it just all started from a game conversation.
Yeah. And this was like a couple months ago. And I kind of picked up the book. You said... Which one did I start? I think Atlas Shrugged. Fountainhead.
I said Fountainhead because it was the shorter read. It was Atlas Shrugged. I think is a much bigger book, but it's Atlas Shrugged is the one that's kind of they're both like highly touted, but I think Atlas Shrugged is the one that more people reference when they talk about Ayn Rand.
Yeah, and there's a bar by Lincoln Square that's called Fountainhead. So there's got to be some
That's
kind
so
of
interesting.
reference there.
Yeah, and when you go inside, so I don't know. I think that it's kind of tied to Ayn Rand. When you walk in, it's got this very like old school 20s 30s bustling kind of scene.
Okay.
Little known fact about Fountainhead is that it's actually one of the larger whiskey bars in the city.
Okay, that's up my alley.
Yeah.
I enjoy whiskey, yeah.
So you know Delilah's, right?
Yes.
Obviously, it's on Lincoln Avenue. Delilah's is kind of like the gold standard of whiskey joints, of whiskey bars. Fountainhead is supposed to have more whiskeys than they do. Like, I can't remember by how many hundreds more, but they have a lot more options than even Delilah's does. So it's everyone knows it for their rooftop, and they got good food there, right? And they got a huge beer list. It's several pages long, but it really is at heart a whiskey joint.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole scenery and everything with it is just reminds me of that whole era that Ayn Rand writes about, which is that the 20s, 30s, like industrial revolution kind of era.
See, like, I briefly played BioShock. I didn't really get into it. I didn't dive into that genre that too hard. But yeah, just kind of like playing it for what it was worth. Just kind of seeing BioShock, right? It really kind of... it's really kind of dark in a sense where it's like... If we didn't have the kind of like standardization of like how industries should kind of operate and how like bless you, and how like because back in the day, right, during like the Industrial Revolution, there was really no labor laws. There was no like work laws in terms and working conditions and everything like that. It's like it was all completely crap in a sense. Like just to be blunt about it, it was really bad. But yeah, just seeing that and BioShock is like that would have been kind of like more or less an outcome of us if we didn't have certain restrictions and like ethical codes put into place.
Totally.
And like going back, so as soon as you open BioShock, actually the intro quote, it says, I have it. Because this one, after I read it again, I was like, okay, this is definitely like what Ayn Rand is all about. Yeah. So opening it says, "I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington. It belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican. It belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow. It belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Rapture, a city where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small, and with the sweat of your brow, Rapture can become your city as well."
So I'm not sure if you you probably picked that up already, but like Andrew Ryan is a play off of Ayn Rand.
Interesting. That's
actually very interesting.
Yep. It's got a lot of roots in BioShock with and the writer Ken Levine, or the director, I can't remember what part he had, but like he even outright says, Ayn Rand was was a big influence. So Andrew Ryan
Yeah.
is short for Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
The main bad guy, I guess, or the underground character that starts the initial revolution. I think his name was Frank Fontaine.
Mm-hmm.
He goes by Atlas for Atlas Shrugged.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Tenenbaum.
Yeah, Tenenbaum. I think was it Ayn Rand's last name? Rosenbaum?
I believe something like that. And then,
Babe Tenenbaum is a character.
and then, yeah, there's a whole bunch of posters that are up in the game that says who is on Andrew Ryan. So very similar to who is John Galt, which was a big.
That was a really big thing, actually. I remember as a kid, or not even as a kid, just like a few years ago when I was just going to school, or when I was just traveling to from place to place, I would always pass by billboards that would have who is John Galt.
Really?
Yeah.
You saw that?
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Where?
There was one on Pulaski between Devon and Peterson.
That's pretty
so by
cool.
Northtown.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would always exit because I live in Saguenash, and I would always take that route to North Park, and I would always see that sign like who is John Galt. I'm like, I never looked into it, but it always.
Who the hell is John Galt?
I know exactly. I was like, who the hell's John Galt?
Yeah.
How did he get a poster?
Yeah, I never encountered that actually, like
Really?
in real life. I just
Is it like a fictional character? Is it like
he's a character in Atlas Shrugged.
Oh.
He's basically the Andrew Ryan of Atlas Shrugged. He's a character that that doesn't agree with the way the world is operating, and so he leaves the world and he creates his own society. They call it Galt's Gulch in the book, I think. But, But in Andrew Ryan's game and BioShock, it's Rapture. So he creates this whole society, and he goes around and he starts finding like-minded individuals, usually very powerful, big players in the industry and philosophic and science and all of that stuff. And he collects all of them because they feel the same way he does, and they all leave and live in this society that they create, and they operate under their rules with no government intervention, and they're free. They're free to create and achieve without any restrictions, which is what Ayn Rand was all about. And that's exactly what happened in Rapture, but something went wrong. Just like you can argue and say something's wrong in today's capitalism. It's not necessarily capitalism that we have.
Unfortunately not.
So and then it's interesting that they create this utopian society, or they say we're going to do it better, and then that fails as well in the game at least. But
and Andrew Ryan, like on his way, like his downfall, he would rather self-destruct his facility than have someone else fix it, take over it.
Yep.
Like he'd rather just go take it down.
Absolutely, because that's his creation, and he owns that. He owns his creation. He's not going to let anyone take his work and go with it. Yeah, absolutely. And in the book Atlas Shrugged, the character Hank Reardon does that as well. He's this steel producer who creates this more advanced steel. He's able to do it cheaper. It lasts longer. It's much better. So he puts it out on the market, and it has the ability to destroy his competition honorably. And that's a very key point in Ayn Rand's philosophy. He does it ethically, with integrity, and honorably. Just creates a better product for cheaper. And he's taking care of his people. He's not sacrificing profits by making people work twice as hard. He's paying them living good wages. He's just able to be a better businessman than his competitors. And those competitors all rally against him, and they create all of these roadblocks for him. They use public pressure, they use government pressure by buying politicians and stuff, and they make it impossible for him to do his business. And part of it is like, he just says, well, if I can't do this, I'm not going to sell you the rights to my steel, because that was an option. You can let us all have your patents so we can all create. It's like, no, this is my invention, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's another character who burns down his business, and I think there's a sign that he posts up. I'm going to get the quote wrong, but the sign says, something to the effect of, here is my work, or I left this work as I left it as I found it. Go ahead and take over. But he burned the whole thing to the ground. So whoever has to start from nothing.
From scratch.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's a powerful statement.
Yeah, and we should look up that quick quote because it's a really powerful one.
And what book was that?
That was Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, that's a really powerful quote, actually.
It's a good quote. I can't remember it exactly, but it's basically like, I'm gonna burn my own work down because you can't. You're forcing me out of this business, so I'm not gonna let you take my work and go with it.
Yeah, that kind of like for me, like just that quote kind of just sparked this light bulb in my head where it's kind of like in our current society, right? It's like it's very segmented, right, in a sense, and it really sparked that thought that like, whatever we make of this society now that we have it, right, with kind of the politicians and kind of like the way at least like the US is kind of like going, we're really leaving a lot in a sense for the next generation to come in terms of like just
like cleanup work.
A lot of cleanup work. So a lot of like political tension, right, with China, Ukraine, and Russia, and I don't know, this completely went under the rug like the last year or 2 years, like just the whole idea of like North Korea, that just went right under the rug. I don't know what happened to that.
Right.
But it's like we're leaving a lot of political tension up for the coming generations.
I can't.
You can't find it.
Okay.
But so there's that.
Who was the one that said the quote?
It was one of Hank Rearden's business partners. I believe it was the iron ore mine owner.
Okay.
You got it?
No.
Oh, okay. But so it's like that, right? The political tension for one, and number two is just kind of like the continuously growing national debt, which is, I think now it's like reaching 17 trillion, if not a little bit more. I gotta look that one up. That one. But
it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, like a lot, which is kind of mind-boggling. National debt, as of right now. Oh, actually, it's higher than that. Holy cow!
What's it?
So the public debt, as of December 31st of 2018, it was at 16.1 trillion. But with trans-governmental holdings, the total debt held was approximately 21.97 trillion. Holy crap.
Wow. It's a lot of money. No, you're right. We've dug a pretty big hole.
Yeah. And that kind of like makes me wonder is like, if we were to think of like the countries, right, as just individual people, right, with everyone that's kind of running the government, like that little voice in your head, right, like just in theory, this in a sense kind of fits Ayn Rand's kind of like model. The U.S. is out there to fend for itself, more or less, right, trying to stick it to the man, or in this case the UN. Because right now the voice in the head is pretty much like Donald Trump, who's like clearly going under a lot of scrutiny and everything like that. But it's pretty wild.
I mean, I think every government is out for their own interests, and that on the individual level will definitely speak to Ayn Rand. It's worry about yourself.
Yeah.
Make those deals. Sure, you have to play nice with your neighbors, but you do it for your own advantage.
Yeah.
The U.S. is no different than China or North Korea or Britain or any of those other countries that also do the same thing.
Yeah.
Brexit. So it's very, very self-interest. And that's the way the government should be. It's the American government. It should be representing the American people, right?
Yeah.
So it should be and the Russian government is supposed to represent the Russian people.
Yeah.
So it's inherently supposed to be highly selfish and kind of cutthroat, but
it pretty much is, and that's kind of like really interesting because when you just think of that and just the whole idea of like objectivism and going back to like Ayn Rand's, if like I was saying earlier, if each individual country was a person, it would fit the mold pretty well.
Sort of, because again, part of it is doing business ethically, like I said, integrity and with honor, and you can look at today's corporations and you can say they're not doing that. So she would have a big problem. Like a lot of she appeals mostly to the right wing, and she appeals highly to like libertarians. They're constantly saying, "Let's get the government off my back. Let me do my thing without any intervention." And this is wrong. That I shouldn't have to be forced to do all of these things for the government. Altruism is a big concept in there. So, she would have a big problem with the way today's companies operate.
Okay.
Because they need to do it with integrity, they need to do it with honor. So when you hear things like, when you hear any kind of blanket statement that a company makes saying, there's no evidence that suggests that my product causes XYZ condition, so, I'm not liable for anything, right? When we know damn well that there's internal memos and internal emails where they are aware that it does, but there's no studies or there's no journals or there's no research that exists right now that does it. But they know, they're aware of it. It's just we can't prove it. So that's unethical.
Yeah.
That is wrong. And according to Ayn Rand, that shouldn't happen. And honestly, I think most people would agree businesses shouldn't operate that way. But they do, because the cost of owning up to that mistake is great, and they don't want to pay that cost. They want to keep those profits. So that's a very, very big nudge where businesses disconnect and they stop following that path of producing, because you're supposed to do it the right way. Or another one is where a company will lay off a bunch of people, not pay them the wages that they can, and force less people to do more work for less money. So you got like a huge company let's take what is it, Jeff Bezos, one of the richest guys in the world. And he's paying his people minimum wage. There's a lot of people that are arguing against that. So, and I think that the disparity is where it is. If he wasn't making as much as he was, I think people wouldn't have a problem with him paying the people that he is. But but he's literally one of the richest guys in the world, and he can afford to pay his people a little bit better and to give them bathroom breaks and all these other horrible things that we hear. So, is he sacrificing honor, integrity, and paying his people well for the sake of profit? Right? So those practices, I think, are where businesses stray. They should own up to their mistakes. They should build. It should be about building a better, cheaper product with integrity, with honor. That's the key point there, and we don't have that in today's capitalism.
Do you see any of that in Chicago though? Like, because I know you grew up in pretty much around the city a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then looking at businesses and people in the community, do you think that the people are lean more towards like selflessness or more selfish?
Well, I think honestly, selfish is the way most of us operate. Period. We're every single person, every action that you do.
The first thought is about you. First.
Almost every action that you do is a selfish action. Selfish is an interesting concept because I think when you say that, people inherently think negative.
Yeah.
Oh, you're selfish. You're being greedy. You're being bad. But I mean, selfish is kind of just defined as looking after your self-interests. Whether that's a good action or a bad action is for other people to decide, not for you. You're doing it for you. And maybe you're doing a good thing that, people might say you're selfless, but you're not. Maybe it makes you happy. Maybe going and volunteering my time makes me happy. And I like the feeling that I feel internally by doing good to other people. Right? And that's still a selfish behavior because I'm still getting something out of doing things for others.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there's very few actions that are truly, truly selfless. Almost everything can be defined as selfish in one way. In fact, I think the only thing I could think of where it's like true altruism, true selfless, is any kind of action that comes out of love. It's the only thing I can think of. Like a mother caring for their child.
Yeah.
Because the mother's not doing something for herself. She's caring for that child, but it's based out of love. She loves that child.
That's true.
And she's not building any love by caring for that child. That love is just in there.
Yeah.
So,
it's innate.
Yeah. So I think that's the only kind of examples that I can come up with that doesn't have some kind of selfish underlying tone, whether it's monetary. I get up and I go to work because I want money. I love what I do for a living. I love the way I impact other people's lives. But I wouldn't do that if I wasn't getting paid. I would do something else.
Right.
So there's a selfish tone with that. So yeah, I think every behavior is selfish in a sense. I just, it's up to society or other people to decide whether it's good or bad.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, I guess personally, like, what would drive a successful city?
Ooh.
Oh.
I think you're right. Well, that's the people that are currently sitting on top, they went selfish, the selfish way, because they had to build something for themselves. But in a sense, I guess like indirectly somehow, like they are building the community, somehow it's giving back to the community. But I feel like that wasn't the initial thought, maybe. Does that make sense?
What do you think the initial thought would be more?
Just for themselves, like, I want to build this business, right? And then if it blows up, then it just so happens to be helping other people.
I'd agree with that, sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know of very many businesses that are started to not create profit or to not, and even nonprofits. Sorry, but they're not nonprofits. All that means is that all the money at the end of the day has to be accounted for, whether it's somebody's salary or it goes back into whatever it is that your nonprofit stands to impact, right? So and that's why you have nonprofits with people making double-digit millions in salary.
Yeah,
it's not a nonprofit. They created that. It does generate profit. They just don't have any profit left over in the business by the end of the year. That's all that means. So yeah, every business I think is generated to create money.
Yeah,
that's true. Either like, if not money, just trying to like spread awareness and kind of like your ideas.
Yeah, I mean, do they do good? Sure, they there is some good that they do. I'm not saying down with nonprofits. But, and yeah, they spread their ideas like, hey, I'm a subject expert in this, and this is my business, and I'm gonna, grow that. So yeah, but I think ultimately, yeah, they started with profit in mind.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything. Like even what you call it, like us, like we started the podcast, right, in terms of like just trying to pretty much spread awareness, right, and kind of like give everyone their, like, everyone's got a voice, like we were talking about earlier, and kind of like we want to kind of show that to the world that you're not alone in a sense, but also we're trying to kind of generate some type of revenue stream.
Of course.
And that's still a hard thing to do, right? We're still trying to figure it out, but as of right now, we're not really making much, or we're not making anything actually. But yeah.
So donate, guys.
Yes.
If you will.
Support,
please
subscribe, follow.
Yeah, so that we can keep pushing out this awesome content.
And thumbs up while you still can.
Yeah, I still can.
My thumb, oh no. It broke off. I have no thumbs left.
Yeah, I mean, look at Aligned, the company we all work for. It's a business, so it has to create profit in order to keep growing and keep going and keep paying all of us. But also at their core, their mission is to change the way the public sees healthcare.
Yeah.
Right, and that's always kind of been their driving force. So they definitely like operate in a way to kind of get that information or to drive that point.
Yeah.
But it still needs to generate profits so that it can continue to grow.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought, but like, I was gonna say, damn it! But I want to pay homage to like these kinds of, I guess, ideologies, because without them, I don't think society would be where it is now. Because you need a mixture of like everything, and that's just what, I guess, turns the gears of society.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I think that's where Ayn Rand is. One thing, right? You know, going back to Ayn Rand, I think that's where she became so powerful. Is, again, like I said, she's super highly controversial, but she got us to think. And there's a lot of people that talk about her that come up with her. You just growing up in the city saw who is John Galt, and you didn't even know what that was about.
I did not.
You know, you played a video game, BioShock, and you didn't realize that her work was kind of influential in there. And me, I stumbled across it, you know, when I was much younger, listening to a radio jockey. It was Mancow Muller, I think, if you remember him. He was like
before my time.
he's a libertarian shock jock.
Okay.
And he would, you know, he's like a tamer kind of. I don't want to say Rush Limbaugh. I don't want to put him in the same category, but he's got that sensationalist, like, here's the truth, and he's like, you know, really like kind of loud and stuff. But he's not as far right as like a Rush Limbaugh is. But he brought up that book, and he said it changed his life, and it changed the way he thought. He generated thought, and he said it was one of the best books he's ever read. So I was like, oh, I'll try that out. Why not? And that's how I stumbled on it. Whereas other people study it in their coursework.
Oh my God, yeah. My friend Molly, she, I think she said grade school or high school, but they teach that.
8th grade, she said.
Grade. In 8th grade, they read that book.
Atlas
Shrugged.
Atlas Shrugged. And I'm like, interesting.
And they studied Ayn Rand. Yeah, I never heard about her growing up in school. Like I said, I was listening to the radio and I came across it.
We studied George Orwell, Big Brother.
Cool.
1981. Right, 1981.
I don't think I've read him.
That's kind of almost.
You mean that one book, right?
Same concept where like there's the government's the Big Brother watching you.
Yeah, that's. I don't think it's 1981. I think it's 1941.
Something like that.
Or
probably,
something.
I think it's 1941.
Yeah.
I remember reading that in high school.
But it's really interesting how we all stumble upon this kind of just differently. But she's great. I love her because of the fact that she creates this thought. I don't necessarily agree with her philosophies either. And but every time the subject of her comes up, people usually have such a strong reaction, either for, mostly against, that I find myself in the position of having to explain her frequently. Even though I never studied philosophy, I couldn't go into the whole depth of is it an actual philosophy or not.
Yeah.
I just kind of took the time to really, really understand what she was thinking about.
She took it for what it was.
Right? And like I said, I had to have the position of explaining it often because people were usually just had such a strong reaction that I was like, but this is what she's saying.
Yeah.
And I found that made me understand it so much more. So it taught me to, it really, really taught me to just kind of listen to the other side. And then, so whenever I'm generating a thought or something's going on in my head, I'm able to take myself out of my own body and put myself in the opposition thought and say, what would they think about this? How would they feel about it? And why are they thinking differently than I am? And I found that I understood things so much more by doing that.
And I think that you said that very well. And so our listeners, if anything, with anything, go in with an open mind because that's the best way to learn. I mean, granted, just like Mark said, just put yourself in their shoes. Just kind of try to think how they're thinking, right? Just see how they're thinking, and then you can learn a lot more. or at least gain a better understanding.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson that I think, honestly, this world really needs to hear, especially today, because we don't take the time to consider opposition, to consider any kind of thought. We make our minds up so quickly, and
they fight right away. They argue right away.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, you don't believe me? You're a libtard, or you're a Republican idiot, and people just like throw each other under the bus, and they just completely reject the argument automatically. Yeah. And then they can go on social media and they can hear 50,000 other people that think the way that they think, and they're like, okay, I'm right. I know I'm right, because look at all these other people that also feel the same way.
Yeah,
we need to have dialogue. We don't have dialogue anymore because we don't take the time to listen to the other side, regardless of whatever it is.
Yeah, and kind of like taking that, right, and just kind of like using it as like a way to kind of like just live your life in terms, right. It's kind of like just trying to create a reason why, understanding, right, like why so and so person is doing this or why they're doing that, right. Like, for a good example of that actually is like morning traffic, right. When you're trying to go to work, you have all these people like honking, raging, and speeding and whatnot, and kind of like I never really thought about that until I actually started working at a line, because I got to travel from up north over here in Saguenash all the way down to like Wicker Park. So I take 9094 all the time. And it really kind of made me think more, and like I just need to calm down and just chill out a little bit. Because like you would see all these cars just fly by, honking, taking the emergency lane and everything like that. I'm like, man, it's either these guys woke up on the wrong bed today, or they're like they're in a rush, whether it's like a family emergency or like some other reason and stuff like that. So I kind of like developed a means of like giving the other person that's kind of like either mad or in a rush like an excuse.
Yeah.
So I kind of did that.
Benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, benefit of the doubt, but also just kind of like giving them a reason for their actions, more or less. Mm-hmm. And kind of like going back too, is like I was already kind of like that with confrontation or like altercations. Like I was driving this guy home. I tell the story all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was driving this guy home from our prior work place. We were just working out. It was at Galter Life Center, and we were just taking. I'm not sure if you're too familiar with this general area, Mark, but
general, yeah.
Yeah. So like, I was taking like Jersey, which is also Kedzie. Yeah. But it turned into Jersey. We're taking a left down that street onto Lincoln, and then I was to make a right onto Lincoln. And there was a guy in front of me, right, that just happened to be going the same way. And when I made that right onto Lincoln after the left from Jersey to Lincoln, and I was making
too many directions.
Sorry, too many directions. All right, but yeah, so I made a turn. He made a turn. I made the same turn. Several turns later, he pulls off to like the center lane. I didn't think much of it. I was thinking he's probably going to go to Home Depot. I continue straight. I made another turn. He comes in right behind me and then goes into oncoming traffic and cuts me off. And then he gets out of the car, furious, and kind of like, like just saying like, you think this is a game, or you want to fight or something. He was trying to instigate a fight, pretty much.
Sure.
And at that point, I was like, buddy, no, I'm not trying to follow you. I'm not playing any games. I'm just bringing my coworker home.
So somehow you triggered him without even knowing.
Exactly.
I had a similar experience. I had a guy actually pull a gun on me.
Man, that's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also why I de-escalated that situation, because I don't know what that guy had.
Totally.
I don't know if he was on drugs or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if he was like trying to transport, quote unquote, some substance in the car.
Sure. Yeah, you never know. And it's better to just not engage than to take the chance and find out. Like,
exactly.
What's going to happen either way? Like, you guys fight, you go to jail, one of you gets hurt, maybe someone gets stabbed or shot. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Over a perceived little accident. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the gun that got pulled on me, I was driving home from college. And back then we didn't have cell phones or any of that stuff. But they did have a bulletin board where it's like, hey, if you're going home for this weekend to this area, collect people, like rideshare, kind of early form of rideshare using a bulletin board, and they'll give you some gas money. So I had two people.
Awesome.
I had two people in my car, and I was driving home, and I had this little piece of shit little car that was like 0 to 60 in maybe 2 days.
2 days.
And
oh man,
do
you remember making model?
It was a Pontiac 6000 LE. Those don't even exist anymore. Yeah, look it up, people. That ages me real quick. It's a tiny little 4-cylinder car. It was just this piece of shit car, and it was all beat up and used up. But I was a college kid, and driving home, I was in the middle on the highway. It was like a 3-lane highway. I'm in the middle lane. There's nobody 100 yards in front or behind me, and all of a sudden, this big SUV comes up and gets right on my ass.
He's on left and right.
Yeah, you could go around me on the left. The left lane's open. I'm not blocking, but he comes right up on my ass, and then he comes around me. He comes to the side, comes in front, and cuts like really close to my front end, and then comes back around to my passenger side. And the girl who was in the passenger side flicks him off. She gives him the finger. I was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Don't like this dude's crazy." Yeah, and that set him off. So he gets in front of me and he brake checks me. He slams on his brakes and I slam on mine. And then he comes back around to the passenger side and she flicks him off a second time.
Kick this girl out.
Oh my God, I was so pissed. I was yelling at her. I was like, stop. And she's like, what? He's being an asshole. And like, right, she's justifying it. Exactly. Even more. So that second time really pissed him off. He gets over to the driver, to my side. He shows me a gun. He pulls out a gun. He shows me the gun. I see him put a clip in it. He clicks it back and he points it right at me. So this guy's got a huge SUV, something like a Suburban-sized kind of thing, black SUV. There's no way. I can't outrun this guy. My car is so slow. I'm not going to ram him. It's tiny. I can't like speed off. I can't hit my.
You have two other people in your car.
Yeah, I'm like, there's.
You were pretty much done.
I realized I was like, there's nothing I can do that this guy can't counter. So, I was like, oh my God, this guy's gonna shoot me. So the only thing I can think to do was, you remember those? You guys may not remember this, but there's these old like brick cell phones. It's like the first version of a cell phone.
I remember those.
I had one of those. It's like for emergency only. Don't use because it's like $5 a minute or something like that. But I had one of those. So as like I said, he showed me the gun, put the clip in, clicked it, and pointed it at me. So I grabbed the phone, I showed it to him, and I started pressing 911 on there and called. Luckily, he didn't shoot. He sped off and just disappeared. But all because of road rage. That's a story that story was helpful when I was teaching my daughter how to drive.
Yeah. Where was this at?
53 North on the highway. I was coming home from NIU. I went to NIU.
Oh, wow.
So I was coming home from DeKalb.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah. So you never know. People are crazy. It's just better to not engage ever.
That's true. De-escalate the situation if you can. Don't engage.
Especially in Chicago, there's so much like that. That's the stigma, but I mean, and we're trying to change it. But just crime and violence, like
crime and violence is everywhere.
It's
right?
everywhere,
and it's really up to the individual, right? If they're clearly like holding themselves a certain way or they have a certain demeanor, that's gonna cause certain conflicts to happen, right? But if you're just minding your own business, going through your own day-to-day thing, for the most part, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right? Because no one's going to bother you. You're not bothering them. You're just doing your own thing. They're doing their own thing.
Usually.
Right? Usually, right? Until you encounter someone that's hot-headed or just really kind of flustered that day.
And even then there's usually things you can do to, again, de-escalate the situation.
Yeah.
Think
about it, though. That's Ayn Rand. Do your own thing. Don't worry about anyone else. Yeah.
Focus on yourself. And nothing. I think I put that quote out on Facebook or something. Recently, it was something to the effect of, "There's nothing in my life that got worse when I focused on myself and made myself a better person." Mm-hmm. So I think it was a quote, something that popped in my head when I was running, And I was like, oh man, I'm running, I'm losing weight, I'm feeling better. I've got all these thoughts that pop in my head as I run. That's why I love to run, because it's almost my like kind of philosophical moments. And yeah, I was like, wow, nothing gets worse when every single person like self improves. Nothing in this world gets worse.
Is it possible to go that route without being jaded to other people? Like, I kind of have this problem, right, when I'm trying to improve on myself, grow, develop. But in doing so, I kind of, like, block people out because, like, that's how I focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like, in the moment when you're working out or when you're... whatever it is you're doing?
More like it maybe like a year or two, like the whole year or two
you
when I was in college. I was like, you know what? I'm
you just disappear.
I pretty much went.
I'm good. Yeah. Peace out, dudes.
Yeah.
Bye.
I don't think that's a healthy way of doing it, right?
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, it depends. Like, so it's like going back to what we were talking about during like the last episode with like Connor and Eric. It's like when you gotta dial it back just to look out for your own health. It's like just do it.
Totally.
You gotta. Because you're your own priority and your highest investment, or pretty much you are your highest investment, because if your emotional state of mind is being drained by X, Y, and Z, you need to take a step back and reevaluate the situation now. Just because if you're emotionally down, right, or if you're not feeling like your normal self, you're not going to perform good, and you're going to make kind of bad decisions or like just poor decisions, more or less, and then it's going to really, affect your investment in a sense, right? Because you are your own investment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The concept is, I mean, again, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing that you stepped away and maybe they were creating distractions and you needed that space. Who knows? But I mean, the concept is that self-improvement, whenever you better yourself, mind, body, spirit, whatever it is, you're just that much more capable to be a better person for whoever it is that's in your life. Your fiance, your friends, all of that stuff. I don't know if you need to I don't know if you need to exit them out of your life temporarily while you're doing that, but yeah, just the whole idea of getting yourself better just makes you that much more able to help.
Yeah.
And if they're your friends and you tell them like, hey, I need a couple weeks, I'm going to kind of close the doors and focus on myself and really kind of come out of it a little bit better place. They should understand if they're your friends and support you. But if they're like, hey, where you been? You're not my friend anymore because you didn't text me back.
Yeah.
You dipped out on me.
And then, I don't know.
It's different, yeah. Makes sense.
That kind of says more about them than... I've got friends that, that live in other parts of the country, and we don't talk for sometimes over a year or so. And yet when I get back in touch with them, or they get back in touch with me, it's like time never mattered. It never stopped.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it should be too. It's like, you develop these relationships and these, with these people that you bond with, and for the most part, they usually end up like that, right? Where it's like you trust the individual, and you guys are good friends, but just life circumstances, right, take you into different directions in life.
Totally.
And then, y'all doing your own thing, and then from there, you guys can still come back one day and get like a beer or something, and just kick it like, it was yesterday, I guess just hung out or something like that.
And if they ever call, I'm there.
Yeah.
It's how it is.
So
that's true.
Yeah. I guess with that being said, we'll wrap this up. What advice would you want to leave the listeners?
Ooh.
Yeah. In terms of everything we talked about today.
I like the concept of just consider the opposition. If you're ever going to have a thought, just consider the opposite thought and think about it for a while and see, if nothing else, it'll solidify your viewpoint that much more clearly when you consider alternatives. Realize that selfishness is not bad. It's good to look out for yourself. It's good to impact yourself and make yourself better. But don't be a dick. It's pretty simple. You don't have to be an a-hole to do it. If you are, then you're probably on the wrong path. At least I feel so. You may not believe so. That's mainly about it. I don't know. Is there any other topics that you would gear that towards?
What do you mean? Like that advice?
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, just like what we talked about today, right? With objectivism, just like you said, just being able to understand it. I mean, you don't have to truly believe it, but just just have an open mind, you know, because you want to be able to understand what other people are saying. You don't want to close yourself off to these things. You're just limiting yourself, to be honest.
Totally.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't even fully agree with Ayn Rand. I think she's got a decent system down, but I think where she faults is she doesn't factor in man's
natural flaws.
Exactly. In order for her system to work, everyone would have to operate morally and with integrity and honestly, and we don't. We lie. We cheat, we steal, we're bad people.
Yeah.
The fact that we have to create laws proves that. If we were so good, we wouldn't even need laws because everyone would just naturally be doing it.
Yeah, because Ayn Rand's ideology, it's like the perfect man, the perfect city, the perfect society.
Exactly.
A utopia built for the perfect person.
And that person doesn't exist. It's not possible. I've lied in my life, you know. So
we've all lied in our lives.
I would be lying if I said I didn't.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, we flaw. But you couldn't do that and operate in her world, and that's where I think she gets it wrong. I think, but she does have a lot of good concepts that make you think, which I like.
For sure.
Awesome. So with that, Mark, we just want to thank you for coming on.
Cool. Yeah, I was glad to be here.
It was our pleasure to host you, and this definitely was a very interesting kind of discussion in terms of like just understanding kind of like the human mind, more or less, right? Yeah. And with that said,
you gotta play BioShock now.
Yeah, you do.
I gotta play all of them now.
Yeah.
And with that said, to our viewers and listeners, thank you for dining with us, and we will, or you wanna?
Yeah, actually. If you haven't already, follow us on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, Apple, leave a review, a rating on Apple Podcasts, and we appreciate any kind of feedback. We're still learning and growing, but and hit us up on Instagram because we post a lot on there, and we like to interact with you guys more. DM us your questions and even topics you guys are interested in. Team effort. Thanks for supporting us till now.
And again, thank you for dining with us, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Take care.